right, welcome in, guys. Last one of the year. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm your host, Mike Wahle. This is Block Party, and this is after the Packers loss on the road to the Eagles, 22-10. Show is always sponsored by BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one sports for online betting. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, NHL, UFC. BetOnline is your number one sports betting source for the new year. From touchdown to three-pointers and hat tricks, BetOnline has you covered on every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. The only way to talk about this game, truthfully, is just the way it started, the way everything happened is really the iconic Mike Tyson quote, everybody's got to play until you get punched in the mouth. And, the Eagles ended up rolling this game 22-10. It's not a high-scoring game. The defense plays really well for the Green Bay Packers, all things considered. We'll talk about it a little bit more, but you really couldn't – this game, if you had your doubts about whether or not the Packers were going to win this game summed up in the first 5 minutes of the game. Nixon gets absolutely smashed on kickoff return, subsequently says he doesn't want to return kickoffs anymore. He wants to be quarterback one. That's probably a different subject we can tackle a little bit later. But gets absolutely smashed, fumbles the ball, whether they recover it or not. Things happen at the bottom of the pile. I can tell you, dislocated leg or torn ligaments, dislocated fingers, those things happen. So we get the ball. The Eagles get the ball. Got first play of the game, big run from Saquon Barkley. We're going to break that one down. And then the third play of the game, Hurts has, over 5 seconds to throw the football. Finally, we get Evan Williams finally gets beat in the back of the end zone for a touchdown. The next series, we get a quick pressure on third down, stuffed on first. The series after that, Jenkins gets knocked out of the game with a stinger, which is something that anybody who's ever played offensive line experiences. They can be brutal. Should have got picked off the first play of the game. I mean, you're kind of watching the first 5 minutes and just going like, oh, okay, well, one team showed up and one team didn't. One team is punching in the mouth. One team's getting punched in the mouth. So this is one of those games, and we talked about earlier in this show last week in the preview, and then also on a couple of different shows and podcasts I did last week. It's like this was going to be a really tough game for the Green Bay Packers to win. How are they going to win this game? What were the keys to the game? To recap, number one, explosive plays. Packers have been one of the top teams in delivering explosive plays on offense for the entire season. They had 7 this year. How many of those were in kind of times that it mattered? Again, starting the game, getting behind the 8 ball, giving up so many extra possessions to the Eagles through turnovers, all of this stuff. So, so effectively you give them 4 free possessions. So while we have 7, the standard is kind of 10. That's what we talked about last week being the number. If we have 10, that means you're probably scoring a lot of points. Doesn't happen. Number 2, keep Love under 30 throws. Every time we've seen him throw the ball, once you get into the 30s, closer to the 40s, those games usually go bad. The last couple of weeks, we've seen Matt LaFleur and that offense really tamper down the amount of times he's throwing the football. We're not leading the league in plays per game either. I mean, I think the average, the higher of the averages is up around 65. I think we're closer to 60. But as you watch these games and the way that just Jordan Love operates and maybe where he is and what we not considering a sophomore slump necessarily because this is year 5, but you get the big contract. The season I think certainly has not been. Jordan Love's a very, very good player, but to say that he took that next step to be in, we were talking about, is he inside or outside the top 10, the top 13 last year? I think you're still asking the same question going into this offseason. There's a high potential, high upside, a lot of things that go well, but same stuff: footwork, errant throws, too many turnovers, etc. And a lot of that happens when you get him over 30 throws a game, and that's kind of been the marker, at least the anecdotal marker that we've used on this show. If you want to have a lot of success, try to keep him under 30 throws a game. I think he went 22 for 33, 212 yards, 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. We'll talk about those interceptions because 2 of them are just kind of pragmatic. But then again, first play of the game, he could have thrown a third or a fourth. And then the big thing was, are you going to be able to win the line of scrimmage against the Philadelphia Eagles, who have, to be fair, potentially the best offensive and defensive line combination in the NFC? Or you look at the Chiefs and kind of what the Chiefs bring to the table with Chris Jones, and I think they have, at least 2 All-Pros on Joe Thuney and Creed Humphrey on their offensive line. Obviously, we really like the right guard as well. But this offensive line for the Eagles is fantastic. I thought the Green Bay Packers defense played really well against them. To be honest, you just give up that many extra possessions. It's really difficult to be successful. But defensively, look, the Eagles, and they've been doing this all year, we'll point it out on film, they want to get you in one-on-one situations with their guys. There were so many times in this game early on, I think the third play of the game for the pressure, there's one player that is single blocking. I think it was Jenkins, the first third down. One player signaling. Everybody else they're chipping out. They go empty. They chip out. They slide Myers to the right guard, and they leave their best offensive lineman versus one of the various defensive talent and 3 defensive tackles that they have for the Eagles. And he wins early on Jenkins, gets a pressure, gets him to Fort, gets Love out of the pocket. Nolan Smith, who had, I didn't even know the kid was that good, to be honest with you. And had one hell of a game. Flushed him out to the left and throw across his body out of bounds, and then you're starting this kind of downhill slide. So in order to win this game, a lot had to go right for Green Bay. It just didn't. And again, I think you have a really good game plan. Then you get punched in the mouth. All of Mike, the Mike Tyson quote. And how do you get punched here? Well, not only do you give up the fumble, the early touchdown, the 3-and-out, but then, arguably one of your top, if not definitely your best offensive lineman, or excuse me, one of your top 2 offensive linemen, but one of your better players on your football team, one of your leaders, goes out with a stinger, which there's various degrees of how bad these stingers can be. I went through my second year in Green Bay, and I was getting stingers every single week for about 7 weeks straight. I had to wear a cowboy collar. If you couldn't go back and watch the TV copies, I'm literally on the field doing push-ups, trying to get feeling back in my right arm. So these things happen. It's essentially a pinched nerve. It feels like your whole arm's on fire. It drops down. You just lose. You lose all kind of muscle tone there for a second. It pops back. I remember guys that lose 50% of their strength, though, and it takes weeks and weeks and weeks to come back from it. So I'll tackle this in a little more depth later, but it's not something necessarily that you can just come back from. A lot of people can come back from them, but it's not necessarily one thing. It's just they're always the same. But you get into that situation, and then you start talking about all the things that you've been worried about during the year. The efficiency. No matter how good you think Josh Jacobs is, and I think he's phenomenal, he's had to make so many plays while getting hit. And was that ever going to catch up? Well, it did against a really good defensive front. And to their credit, the linebackers for the Eagles played a hell of a game. I thought they were going to be an opportunity. Obviously, Nico McDean gets hurt. I think he's out for the playoffs. It's too bad. Zach Baum did a really nice job. And I think the way that they scheme, we'll show it on tape, but I think the way that they scheme Zach to get on the line of scrimmage and make more plays there is really, really smart, obviously, by Vic Fangio. Our lack of pass rush, you see it on the third play of the game with the Eagles. 5.7, 5.8 seconds to throw the football in the red zone is just unacceptable. Can't get there with 4. And we'll see that, while both teams gave up 2 sacks, you have to find some context in those numbers, because those numbers certainly don't tell the whole story. Offensively, if you just watch this game, we'll hit that tape first. Despite the efforts of really, you think of Josh Jacobs just plays so hard, and he's such a good football player. Obviously, there's a fumble issue there that we probably have to, like some of the great guys when you're fighting for those extra yards. Amon had fumble issues every once in a while, but you take the good with the bad, because they just run so hard, and they're always trying to get that extra yardage. And then, obviously, as time goes on, those seem to kind of fade away. He plays so hard. Jaden Reed played so hard. Those 2 guys are just absolute dogs. And there's guys you can build a franchise around. There's no question about it. What you see, though, I guess, is that despite the scheme, despite how great Matt LaFleur is at calling offensive plays, execution matters. And this is something that we tackled last week. Execution matters. Footwork, body position, football IQ matters. Decisions you make with the football matter. The Philadelphia Eagles have spent draft picks and coaching resources to draft and develop at the highest level. And quite frankly, their guys were just too good for our guys up front. And they are reaping the benefits, and they'll continue to reap the benefits as long as Jalen Hurts is healthy and they can, muster something on offense, because they are just unbelievably talented. Jordan Love has one of his worst games. I gave you the stats earlier, but zero touchdowns, 3 picks. And really, there was a lot of pressure all game. Part of that's the way of the NFL now, the way that we scheme, the way that we design plays. Part of that's, are we getting the ball out of our hands fast enough? There's a lot but most of it is those guys are getting beat because they're playing against superior players. Never really had a chance to run the ball consistently. I think you see our carries are over 4 yards per carry. But Josh Jacobs has 18 carries in this game. Certainly, if you're looking at down the barrel of how we're going to win, he's in the 20s probably, if we're just being realistic. And again, I think if you look at his numbers overall, let me pull them up real quick. If you look at his numbers overall, we have Josh with, I want to say 81 yards, but I think 31 of them are on one play. If I can get back to it real quick. Josh Jacobs, 18 for 81. Yeah, 31 on one play. So you take that out and you got 17 carries for 50 yards. And, I don't think that's a recipe for success anywhere. And I know that's, listen, you're messing with the stats a little bit, Mike. Well, late fourth quarter in the game, he rips off that 31-yarder. We'll show it on tape. It was just a magnificent run. Just a, kind of a proxy for how he played the entire season. But it's really, really tough to play against a good football team when you have some of these deficiencies. Let's get to them. All right, so we start off. We're down 7-0 already. Get the ball. You go under center. What have I done here? Here we go. So under center, first play of the game. And they do a really good job here. We're going to clear this out, and the outside player is just going to run a basic at, the 24, 25-yard line. And I think that's Nakobe Dean. He drops into the window. So Jordan Love feels like he has to throw this ball. He's already made the decision to throw it because this is what the coverage dictates. But he has to throw it over Dean right there. Throws a little bit high, and then C.J. Gardner-Johnson really has an opportunity to get a pick on the first play of the game. They shift down, and now listen, this is what the Eagles have been doing all year. They want to get single blocks on those defensive tackles. And so they'll bring down one of I think this time it's Zach Ron, but at 53. They'll bring him down the line of scrimmage, and what that does is that's going to force you to single block. And they're just showing your cards there. What are you going to do with this action? This is what we do best. We're going to try to get your guys our good on your good and see who's better. And eventually the Packers end up running a lot of gap stuff to find success here because they know this isn't going to work. But they run split flow here. And, of course, we just get beat on the backside. It's just really, really tough. Now, this is just personal preference, probably from being an offensive lineman. But the first third and long of the game, for me, you almost throw a pick on the first play. You get nothing on the second. Now you go empty. And we're going to see this early in the game. The Green Bay Packers tackles are looking in at the ball, which I can't believe they're doing that to the degree that they are. But you're going empty in the red zone, pop going the wrong direction. So you're on the 15-yard line. So you got all the noise from a very, very raucous Philly crowd at Lincoln Financial in this situation. And the choice to go, obviously you're going to try to do a quick through. Now, I think they run quarters up top and 2-man underneath, right? So they're taking away the short throws at the sticks. So you see in the bottom, he's doing a quick look. He looks up top. There's nothing there. Now he can let the ball go right now on the top side. but he sees that guy in his face. We're lucky not Nolan Smith almost gets him right here. But we just get beat. And it's only single block. You got two chips. You got the center going to the to 98. And really just push, pull, arm over. And that's throw the ball away. And it's just a bad, like, even if you don't get it, it's just a bad start to the game when you give up a pressure there. And listen, obviously, you don't, as an offensive lineman, you're not expecting to lose there. And you're hoping the ball gets out quick. And I'm sure when they put that play in, they're like, hey, don't worry, guys, we're going to get the ball out quick. But for some reason, the ball's maybe not coming out as quick as what was hoped for. So they just reduce their front. They're really, it's just really they call this a 34, but they just have a reduced front. This looks like a 325. And this is where, tough sport, man, hits the fan. So low man wins here. The problem with these shots, and this is where he gets his stinger. I think it's a stinger. And if it is, it could be a direct headshot, but usually these things are like a glancing blow where somebody just hits you on the side of the head, and you just get one of those and it pinches your nerves, your nerve in your neck, and everything again, it feels like your arm's on fire. It drops down. You can't move it for a second. You got to shake it out, do some push-ups, whatever. But this is, first, this kid played unbelievable. But and really, when you talk about setting the tone early and getting punched in the mouth, like, this guy did a great job, including this play, quite frankly. But hopefully, this is a short-term one that where you don't see Jenkins having a problem recovering his strength over the couple of weeks or months. It's more of a couple of days. But it's really unfortunate because he gets beaten the first series and everything. But this is one of the better guys, especially in this game, one of the most important players on your team, because he's probably being asked to single block a lot, because we know that on the other side, whether it's Jonathan Davis, any of the Georgia guys, basically you're going to go over there and go, okay, we got a real problem. So not a great way to start. Shotgun offset here. And they do kind of a reverse orbit. And there's just room to grow here. I'm just talking about footwork. And again, we talk about, listen, you can scheme all you want. And schematically, they have this pegged. You got a 7 technique. It looks like he's going to spike inside. You got a 2-eye. And so Rasheed Walker has to understand pad level down, good footwork, okay, and slam back and create a hole on that spike 7. So Tucker Kraft does a pretty good job here. But because we're not aware of that 7, he just gets, Rasheed Walker talking about, he gets pushed out of the way. Instead of creating a hole, the linebacker goes over the top. He doesn't drive back on that 7 technique, and the hole could be right off of his ass. But instead, Josh Jacobs has to bounce it, corner and the linebacker get in on the play. Now, it's a good run. It's a 5-yard run. You're winning, right? But you want to talk about making big plays and make people pay for being too anticipatory with the linebacker movement. This is how you do it. Didn't quite get it done. So this is what I'm showing. Look at the eyes of Zach Tom here. How do you still there? Now finally gets to Nolan Smith. Inside move, 9-8 sack, 14-yard loss. Again, these are, if you're at home, I don't want to say these are unforced errors, but these are errors because of the crowd noise, but also because I just can tell you from personal experience, like, there's no way from a body alignment standpoint, I can look this direction and then I'm going against one of the better athletes in the National Football League. I'm kicking back and moving my head over. My body's realigning, all this. Oh, he goes back inside. I got a real problem. So your footwork everything gets affected by that. It's unfortunate they did it that way. I was surprised. A lot of teams are using the guard to do this because it's easier to see, but I don't know. So this, for me, this is his first interception. And this, for me, like, this is on Wicks. This is a catcher in completion, period. No exceptions. It just cannot happen. And Darius Slay's a great player, but as a quarterback, you can't throw the ball up in those situations and trust your guy if that ball is going to get caught by the other team. I don't care how, what a great job the defensive back does here. If you don't win, turn into the defensive player, take a PI, anything but that. Now, this is Josh Myers is coming up on contract. And for me, these are the things you got to start thinking about. Are we position blocking with our feet? Are we trying to drive and move? Are we trying to move people off the spot? Right here, we go downhill. We want to get on this double, and we're just position blocking. And so your all-pro running back has nowhere to go. He's got to cut back. Too many people home. And again, what a great job he does of making people miss, jump cutting, all of that, and ends up getting a 4 or 5 yard gain on something. But there's not the room or the margin for error is so small when you're position blocking like that. And we'll contrast this with watching what the Eagles are doing. And the Eagles are not perfect by any means, but just trying to stay square down the field and trying to stay on track is such a big deal in this game. It's something a couple of our guys just don't do very well. Now, this kid right here, he got benched in the 3 holds. And I'm actually pretty bullish on this kid. He battled pretty well. Now, his hands are terrible, and he got caught for holding. One of them was kind of a BS call, and I think the other one was downfield. But his hands are outside. But he's fighting against good players. This is kind of a good on good thing. He's staying on track. The guy redirects, he directs, he doesn't stop moving his feet. He ends up making a great play here and gives Josh Jacobs a hole to run. Now, is it perfect? No. Did he get benched? I mean, did he get the holds? Absolutely. But again, you're kind of projecting for the future and guys that might be able to play and things like that. Guy stepped in an impossibly difficult situation and didn't get physically dismantled. Had some technical errors that, quite frankly, with the lack of reps and everything, is to be expected. He reads his keys so fast. This is one of those where you're going, okay, they saw this on tape. And I know we have the orbit motions, the reverse orbits, and this and that and the other thing. And I think we talked about this last week. There's only so much new stuff you're going to put on, and these guys are going to find keys. I mean, this is exactly what we talked about in the preview show. So Zach Baum here I don't know whether he's seeing the guard pull. I don't know if he's reading the tight end. I don't know if he's reading the double, but he hits this thing fast. I mean, he's gone and runs right by Tucker Kraft, gets in on the play. That's a fantastic job. Ends up being a 6-yard loss. So the talent's there on this team. And listen, we're going to go into this offseason. We can talk about it later. Do you need a true number one wide receiver? Do you need a better offensive line? What are the compliments you need on offense? The talent's there for the most part. Do you probably need some of those things, somebody to emerge here? Absolutely. But you have so many injuries, and Christian Washington gets hurt, Romeo Doubs gets hurt in this game, Jaden gets hurt in this game. It's that part of it's certainly been frustrating and difficult for the people in that room. But this kid, if you're just looking for football players, this kid's one of them. You build around this kid. Good run. 1st and 20 there, picks up 20. So this is one of the holds. So first of all, Rashid, do a better job of not getting bowled back. Listen, playoff game, in the pocket, exiting the pocket to the left. This is just one of those calls you're going, come on, man, really? Like, that's what we're calling? Just garbage. The kid's struggling enough. Like, you don't need that call. You don't need that call. Up top, I love this. So we usually run this out of the backfield. Most teams run this out of the backfield. So this is Josh Jacobs up here. So we go empty. And they usually run this. So they're just going to run a clear out on the sideline with the first tight end. Second tight end is going to go up the seam. And then they're just going to run this, usually a Texas route. The Texas route is essentially like a V. So he's going to run out to the left and put his left foot in the ground and then go back to the middle of the field. They just break it from there. Linebacker doesn't even see him coming. Great pickup. Fun scheme. What a year this kid had. So Josh Myers gets beat backside here. And, I say that. The guy runs himself out of the play. What a run by this guy, though. Such a fun player to watch. I mean, really, there's a handful of guys in the league that you just get your popcorn ready. He's one of them. Fantastic. So we got a drop over here, a looper on the right side, and these guys are single blocking. 93 had himself a day, and then Nolan Smith gets another one. Gets a stab on Rashid, and to be fair to Rashid, he probably gets to recover from that if we don't flush him out of the pocket. But consistently, when there was a guy that had to win a one-on-one on the Eagles' defensive line, they were able to win that one-on-one. And then this play, look, for me personally, and this is his third pick, and I know here's what happens. You get after the game, you throw this ball. There's no way you're completing this pass. And the safety's pointed the wrong direction. So, you get it, but this just doesn't – it's 1st and 10. There's 20 – there's 2 minutes left in the ball, or more than 2 minutes left in the ball game. Like, you have an opportunity to make a play here. And unfortunately, you let this go, and what happens is it goes on your permanent record. So now you've had a game where you had 3 picks, no touchdowns. Next time you get into the playoffs, that's what they're going to be talking about. Hey, your last game, you threw 3 interceptions, blah, 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 blah. And unfortunately, he might say he doesn't care and you have no conscience, but that's the narrative. And when were you worth the contract? Did you make progress this year? What do we need on offense? Blah, 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 blah. All of that stuff plays in the narrative now because there's just too much information out there to talk about. So that is one of the was one of those plays, along with the Wicks one, where the whole narrative of how Jordan Love played this game could be different given those 2 plays. So defensively, these guys played hard. Listen, there's no shame in giving up 22 to the Eagles. The Eagles are, with that offensive line, the running back with Jalen Hurts, the weapons they have outside. A.J. Brown had 1 catch for 10 yards. Listen, the problem is your offense is struggling. And it's just some inconsistency. We talked about it last week because of the game prior, whether it's the line play, the quarterback play, et cetera, how we're distributing the ball with a fantastic play caller. What is kind of the missing component? The problem is when you give a team like the Philadelphia Eagles. Let me put it to you this way: if you said to me, "Hey, the Eagles are going to score 22 points, are we going to win the game?" Your next question has to be, well, how many extra series did they get to score 22? Because if you get 4 extra series, then it's going to be hard for you to put up points. And we talked about it. The Eagles only had 8 explosive plays to the Packers 7. Given the quality of both offenses, that's a little bit surprising. All the Eagles number 1 on defense, scoring defense, I think. Jalen Hurts, 13 for 21, had 131 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. 131. He didn't have a big game. They didn't play the game that they wanted to play. They probably are happy with the win, and they're probably happy that Jalen's back and he got out of the game healthy. And they're, but again, A.J. Brown, 1 catch. For the most part, when you look at their rushing, they had 169 yards on the ground on 34 carries. I think Saquon had 119 yards on 25. So you're keeping him under 5 yards. Which again, for this team and the quality and the way that they do things, the operation they have with the RPOs is they're a tough team to stop. They run the ball. It's very similar offenses in the sense that they want to run first. I just think when you look at this game in totality, one of the things you have to do is go in and win the turnover battle. You're not going to go into Philly, Lincoln Financial Field with those crazy fans, all the momentum they have on their side, and lose the turnover battle 4-0 and expect to win this football game and miss a field goal. It's too much to ask. But having said that, the defense all year has been making plays. I think they have really taken a step forward, and they of the 2 groups, you have to say that you like the demeanor of which the defense plays. I talked about Josh Jacobs and Jaden Reed because I think those guys are maybe on that side, the dogs on that side that you just go, okay, I really like the style, the charisma, the mentality. There's a lot of them on this side of the football, really at all 3 levels. And I think you have to love that. look, lack of pass rush is a real problem. It's going to be addressed in the offseason, I'm sure, whether through the draft or otherwise. They're going to have to figure out on that specifically. They're going to have to figure out on whether or not they want to bring in somebody who's going to develop the pass rushers, because I just there's too many good talented guys on the team to not be able to pass rush. I looking at this game, I thought TJ Slayton. I know he had the penalty late, but I thought he played extremely well in the run game. There's a lot to ask for. Look, Philly, we'll see it. Like they just do things well. They're not perfect. They make mistakes like everybody else, but Saquon can make up for a lot of mistakes, like Josh Jacobs can make up for a lot of bars. But they do a lot of things really well, and they're just good, fundamentally sound football players. They stay scored in the line of scrimmage. They stay on their tracks. They don't try to turn people. They don't put their ass in the hole. I mean, they try not. They minimize those mistakes. And then the other thing I thought was surprising was honestly, I didn't think. I guess I didn't know what to think, but I hadn't spent too much time on it. But I didn't think I'd see Quay Walker in the starting position, taking away Eric Wilson's reps. He was, whether there's injuries there or whatnot, but he played. He's been playing well, and I think that group has been playing really well at a high level. So I thought that was surprising. And then, obviously you factor in kind of maybe some of the deficiencies in Quay's game. This is not how you want to start a football game. You've got 12 personnel. They go motion across, and it's like, first thing you see. Now, listen, the Philadelphia Eagles are just trying to try to run to the double team if they can. So they decide here to take the right guard and put him on the center. They're going to have Lane Johnson just try to cut off Kenny Clark. And quite frankly, he does a good job of getting penetration here. It's almost too fast. But they're going to try to run downhill right behind that double and then cut off of it. And this is a situation where, like, if you're Quay, man, go. Like, this is what we've been talking about with you. You got to go. See the whole like, just get through there, make the play. Now you're too late. Now we got a 14-yard gain in the first play of the game. And whether or not he makes that play or not, it's like the mentality is, again, I look at this and go, okay, McDuffie, Wilson, Cooper, one of those guys is shooting that gap. And I'm just saying that anecdotally. I can't prove that statistically. This is from just watching this tape. So 2 plays later, and this was going to be I think the name of the game when you talk about the deficiencies for the Packers versus what their strength is. Their strength is their offensive line, and we don't have a pass rush. So you look at this, and I think you got over 5 seconds to throw the football, and you're asking a lot of Evan Williams here. I mean, he's playing defense for a long ass time with a lot of ground in that back. So when you score a touchdown like that, you can't really blame the secondary. You got to go, hey man, someone's got to get home, get him off the spot. That's ridiculous. Gun motion. And this is something I just want to point out. They're starting on a B with Landon Dickerson here. So backside B with him and Mailata. They see TJ Slayton coming across. And so he's going to immediately turn this into an A and start double teaming that shade. Now, what that means is Kenny Clark has to win on the backside versus Mailata, because now he's essentially being single blocked, and Kenny does end up winning this, ends up falling in and getting a shorter gain. Now I'm showing that for 2 reasons. 1, that's a great job by Kenny and TJ. But 2, that's where you want to get to if you're the Green Bay Packers from an offensive line standpoint, is you want to be able to make those adjustments on the fly. That wasn't a pre-snap call. That was we take our 2 steps. We see that there's a change here. We adjust to the change on the fly. Tackle already has this assumption that he's on his own. It tries to make the play. It's not always perfect, but if you do it, you're going to be right more often than not. Got a 2x2 with a tight end attached. And I just show this play because, our Valentine out here is all by himself, especially when you're in these. Sorry. Especially when you're in these looks. I thought these guys did a really good job outside. This is his 1 catch. Really, 1 catch for 10 yards. You pull the backside guard. So I mean, this is from a execution standpoint up front. This is the easiest thing you can do. Timing for the quarterback. He has to go through his his fake. We got the guard pull. He's going to have a little extra time because from the linebackers, and then easy throw and catch. But really, one catch for 10 yards. That's fantastic. Now, sometimes, and this is where you see kind of the difference in play. You look at Cooper and you look at Quay, and Cooper literally pushes Quay into making the play here. I don't know if they're trying to run a cross dog or he just reads it that much faster, but it feels like he just reads it that much faster. Pushes it Quay through the play and ends up making a great tackle. Now, this is where Cooper can, and part of this is being 229 pounds, 231 pounds, whatever he is. But right here, you got Xavier McKinney behind you. You need to just have an incredible amount of violence. Now, I remember this a very similar play when we're playing Philadelphia Eagles in Lincoln Financial. I pull, and I'll be damned if I just look to my left and Jeremiah Trotter is coming at me, 260 pounds of dick and dynamite, and he just wants to knock my block off. Right? Completely different than the center should never be able to just butt him up right here and capture that edge. That's just an absolute no-no. Put your shoulder into his chest and force Saquon Barkley to either bowl this more so Xavier McKinney can get there or have to cut it back. But that's where we can continue to improve. Now, that kid's had an incredible season. This is just one play, but really, really something to look at and go, have to be more violent on the edge there, because that's one of their staple plays. This play right here is just tough, man. You look at kind of Rashawn Gary and you go, I don't know what you're supposed to do either, because they got the cross motion, they've got the RPO, they got the double pull on the backside, they've got the tight end coming across your face, so you can't even really get to the quarterback on the straight and narrow if you want to. That's just tough. That's a really good football play. I mean, they got 8 guys in the box and you got 9 people because you're running your quarterback. It's like, what are you going to do? Route recognition here on the bottom, right? Top of the numbers, 2 yards inside. What is he running? Speed out. Period. Right? Single safety high. I know you got deep third, but he's running a speed out at the sticks. Like, that's route recognition, right? Double A's. So they're going to bring Cooper. They're going to drop Quay. And then I think this is Wooten over here. They're going to drop him. This is a good play. So they run like a little arrow or Texas. I think they're running a screen here. But we drop into it and got to throw it out. This is just a good play by Jeff Hafley. Good play call. Like those little things. Now, listen, Lane Johnson is just a dancing bear here, right? So I think they bring 20 off the edge, Bullard, and he actually spins him like a top. Listen, I bet you that's the only time you're ever going to see an all-pro right tackle get spun by a safety. But the guy recovers, gets his hands back inside. It's insane. This is when you know things aren't your day. So they pull the backside guard. They take the center and they block back. Now the center stays relatively square, but he actually oversets on TJ Slayton. TJ Slayton, nobody blocks him. I don't know if the center thinks that the backside guard is coming with him and they're just all blocking down, because that's what I would have assumed. But he just lets him go here. Didn't even think about it. And Slayton's wide ass open. And just, I mean, this is like a play that needs to be in. Like, Slayton's not going to catch Jalen Hurts, right? But this is a play that needs to be a tackle for loss or a sack. And he just exits. It's like, just throw the ball away, no problem, right? Just live to play another day. It's just funny those are the kind of plays where if you flip the script on that, I bet you Jordan Love, just because that's the way that life's going, he ends up getting hit there. Look at the double that these guys put on Kenny. And because of that, we don't, Quay's not really sure where to go. They're just backing him all the way up into there. Now, this is one of those situations where you don't really know how they're going to run this play, because when they hand this ball off, usually this is split flow, meaning they'd hand the ball off kind of with aiming the running back towards the right guard's ass. but they're just running this on the backside and they're running it on the double team and then they split flow it. So if you close your eyes and I said, what does split flow look like? You could describe it by saying, okay, that tight end's going to go cross face across the center, and everyone, all the offensive linemen are going to run to their right, our left on the screen. And then they're going to hand the ball off to Barkley, going to our left on the screen, their right. And he's going to cut off that guard, that center, whoever the first guy is. So that really that one or the two eye, they don't run it like that. They run it backside off the double because they think the double is going to get that much vertical movement that it creates this seam. And this is where numbers lie. So 2 sacks for both teams, but look at this is so their first sack, he just decides to take a dive, I think, after rolling out to his right. He could have thrown the ball away, anything could have happened. There's their second sack. Still holding, still holding, still holding. Sean Gary, look, hats off, effort play, fantastic. You got to get this out. This is how good players get a lot of sacks. Made the Pro Bowl. I mean, all that's fantastic. But that looks, you look at the stats sometimes. You go, oh well, they both got 2 sacks. Blah 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 blah. It's like that's completely different experience. This was a head scratcher. It's 2nd and 1. They go double A, so everybody's playing off. And eventually, Kellen Moore is over going, wait a second. If I block this up right, I got, Dallas Goedert's not like the most imposing tight end in the world, but he's bigger than 200-pound corner. So they just bubble out, do a quick check, bubble out to Goddard here, crack on the safety with AJ, and then stiff arm. Night. That was really kind of it's kind of how the game goes, though. I mean, it's this was, if we're just being honest, it's a better football team, and the better football team won the game. But there's a lot of stuff you can grow from. I want to hit some listener questions because you guys were nice enough to get them in. Before we go, start down here. It's difficult to see what went wrong on offense. Our players not developed as they should. The team was undisciplined and unprepared. Is this on the coaches? If the players are playing poorly in big moments, what do we need to do to get better? I mean, that's such a big question. Like ultimately, this comes down. We talked about it last week on this show and a couple others. I think schematically, you're kind of on the right path. I think you've got 2 play callers that are really, really good. Hafley's only going to get better the more experience he has, and you see how Matt LaFleur is a masterful play caller in the National Football League. And so this really, to me, came down to, as we thought it might, the ability of our players to execute. And then that is a broader question. If you want to talk about, do they play in big moments and this and that, the other thing, that's I don't ascribe, well, confidence is the thing that matters most. If you're confident that you're going to beat your guy, you're going to play well in big moments, as opposed to being scared. So there's a lot of things that go into that. So preparation is the only form of confidence that nobody can take away from you. So I think that's important. But the thought process behind development. I mean, look at this is maybe a cruel thing to say, but look at the Georgia guys on Philly and look at the Georgia guys on our team. Now they're different humans completely, but their Georgia guys are different than our Georgia guys. Then Quay, Devontae versus Nolan, Jonathan Davis, and then their best player, who's for whatever reason I'm such a knucklehead, I can't ever seem to remember his name. Jalen Carter. Those guys are the offensive line development. Now they're drafting those guys high. They're putting priorities on that, but Jeff Stoughton's probably the best offensive line coach in the game. So they're drafting and developing these guys at such a high level, and you see the difference. Now, I've said this. I think that's the biggest difference right now between the Packers and the elite teams. When you talk about in the NFC North, even the Lions, the Vikings, and you look at the NFC broadly, the Eagles, the development of these guys, as opposed to maybe you look at the Chiefs and you go, well, Joe Thuney was good when he got there from New England. I think they've done Creed Humphrey was going to be a good player, but they've done a great job developing him. But they've had poor tackle play for 3 years and won 6 years and won 3 Super Bowls. So, Chris Jones developed into a hell of a player. But if you look at Chris Jones, you kind of close your eyes and go, maybe he would have been. Those guys are winning a lot more. If you just look at the pass rush of the Chiefs, I'm digressing a little bit, but they're not. They're winning because they have an extremely talented quarterback, a Hall of Fame tight end as his dance partner, and some really good scheme, and then some good guys at key positions. So interior offensive line and defensive tackle are like top notch. And they've got good players all over the board. Don't get me wrong, but it's different than maybe some of these other teams where you're like, these guys are actually, the Lions draft and develop. Holy hell! The Vikings, for the most part, are bringing guys in and making them remarkably better. And then you look at obviously the Eagles here. So I think part of that is just trying to maybe focus it on a little bit more, but also that's always the responsibility of if he's not getting it done at practice, you got to find another way to do it. When you plan on start to watch film for the 2025 draft, I'll be honest with you, I don't watch that much film for I'm not really interested in players until they go to a team that I'm interested in watching. I'll look at a couple guys that go on the Packers radar, but I probably won't do that until somebody comes out with some idea of, I'm not even a mock draft necessarily, but just some guys. Like I always like watching offensive linemen, tight ends, like watching the defensive line, defensive tackles, linebackers, like box. I just like watching box players. I guess the easiest way for me to put it. I just think the confrontation part of the sport is just what I'm really into. So I'll probably start watching those in a couple months. Do you think, in hindsight, that we should have rested players last week, like most other teams? No, I think the way that they did it. Listen, Mr. Miyagi, you go karate down the left side of the street, fine. Right side of the street, fine. Down the middle, squish like great, right? You can't do what we did last week, and I think this and the week before are reasons why. You can't go into a game and say, "Hey, we're going to play you guys, but we're going to try to run the score up, and then we're going to go ahead and sit on the bench. We're going to take you out," because this isn't preseason football. You're trying to sharpen your sword, and you have, except for last year, you have the second. The last 2 years, the 2 youngest playoff teams in the history of the NFL. So you don't have the maturity on your team, or maybe the leadership, or just the experience to say we can rest these guys. These guys don't need reps. We can't get better at some. There's the need for the necessity for improvement outmatches maybe some of the banging that's going to go on during that week. But the mentality of like we're attacking this season until the season's over is something that I think this team could have used that they didn't get. And we talked about that a little last week. You can only rest 6 or 7 guys. And so then you start going, well, who are the 6 or 7 guys? Like you can't rest the offensive lineman if you have your quarterback in. If you don't have your quarterback in, then you start going, well, what's that going to do to disrupt the rest of the players? It's a real hard math deal. I mean, and then you start going, should I just rest the defense? Yeah, it's really difficult. You could say right off the top of your head, you go, okay, I'm probably going to rest Kenny Clark. I'm probably going to rest Josh Jacobs, but then you start going, okay, what is our offense going to look like? It's really hard for Elton. Okay, if you rest Jenkins, for example, after you put in either one of the guards, and you go, okay, does that hurt Jordan Love? I'll rest Jordan. Okay, yeah, you just keep going. It just goes down and down and down. I think it's really, I just think it's a really slippery slope, and I prefer the Dan Campbell approach, man. Let's play the games we're supposed to play. Was the lack of perimeter runs, Matt LaFleur acknowledging weren't going to hold up up front, or just to break down play calling? Do you think perimeter runs would have helped their downhill approach appropriate? So what we saw was, we can't win a one-on-one because they're better up front consistently. And so the double team stuff started working as it has historically with this team. You get in a little bit of trouble, you start running the gap stuff. The gap stuff works a little bit better, right? Because you're trying to cut the defense, you can get a double team on somebody. So I think that makes sense. I would have said, yeah, you like the perimeter runs. I think the problem is the way that they play on the outside at the stand up linebacker or the defensive end position. You don't really know where that guy is going to be if you're trying to crack on him, right? He's not really consistent in where he lines up. And then the way they were IDing and shooting their gun at the linebacker position, I quite frankly, that was the most shocking thing for me going into the game, watching their last film and then watching this film, how they diagnosed and moved so fast. They were really good on the second level. I was surprised. Um, Now, would they have done that if it weren't consistently going downhill? Probably not. So maybe that's an opportunity lost. But you get into these games and you're like, I can't move the ball. We're down. Our guard got hurt. You start going, all right, what? Like, again, there are scenarios built in. Everybody has a plan to get punched in the mouth. There's scenarios built in. One of the scenarios that is not built in is like it's the fourth quarter, you're down to a touchdown, 10 points, and your left guard and your starting left guard and center are hurt. That's not built into and your top two receivers got hurt. Like that's not built into the model. It's like, what do you do with that? So a lot of this stuff you start having to call plays. For example, if Jenkins was going to be single blocking most of the night because you wanted to give the help over to the right guard, all of a sudden Jenkins gets hurt. It's like, what do you do? That was part of your game plan. Describe the emotions inside an NFL locker room after a playoff loss, especially when you knew you had a team. Well, we lost to Philly with the 4th and 26 play, and I think that was the best Packers team I had ever been on. I was on, excuse me. And you just felt completely depleted. And you start, it's hard not to think about all the opportunities that you had in the game. This game wasn't as close. I think, we had over 200 yards rushing in that game. We missed the 4th and 1 down on the goal line. We didn't take the 4th and 1 to ice the game. We punted it away to get the 4th and 26. We throw the pick I think we ran past 66T in overtime. Brett throws the pick. They come back, Brian, with Westbrook's getting the ball every damn play. I think they end up kicking a field goal to win. And so there's so many like very, very specific isolated plays in that game where everyone says, "Oh, it's not this play or that play," but it's like, dude, if you had 4th and 1 on the goal line, you had 4th and 1 to finish the game, and you didn't take it. Those plays they count a little bit more. It feels like than other times. So you fixate and focus on those more for sure. Can you talk about the helmet to helmet to Jenkins shoulder chest area? Is that play common? Yeah, it's super common. Yeah, I talked about it earlier. Like the stinger is something. It's not as popular as it used to be. I don't know, but I feel like guys used to get stingers all the time. Like it's a big high school thing too. And it's like a glancing blow to your head can just kind of shock you into one. And it's the good thing for Jenkins is the season's over. Because the bad thing about stingers, honestly, is like you get one and then they just keep coming over and over and over again. And once you get one, like that heal process, if you got to keep on taking hits, takes a long ass time, and it is not fun, man. You just like the anticipation of it happening again is not a great feeling. Just like not knowing if when you're going to see the version of this team again, or knowing that you're not going to, and leaving the season, I think was a lot of positive takeaways, but what are the big questions? How are we going to help Jordan Love take that next step as a quarterback? Who on the offense? Like, when are we going to get that? Are we ever going to get that mentality? Like, here's the other thing. Like, is kind of an interesting. I don't know if this matters or not, but Matt LaFleur is really well manicured, and you look across you look across the field, and Nick Sirianni's got the 40-year-old beard, and he looks. I mean, when are we gonna? Who's giving this team that like just pound it out? I'm fighting mentality. Like I can duke some of these out. Where does that come? It just doesn't feel like that's the mentality of the head coach. I think the head coach is a phenomenal play caller. I think he's more than shown his chops as a head football coach, and I'm not questioning that. Everybody's got a different style, but he's also he doesn't come off as that kind of guy. And Mike Vrabel just got hired by the Patriots. He comes off as that kind of guy. DC up in Detroit comes off as that kind of those. So there's different types, and that's okay. But who on this team staff, like who is that person or that group that pushes that mentality? Because that's what you're going to need. You look at like how are teams winning these games? They're winning. I mean, shit, the Rams had 9 sacks last night. They're winning the line of scrimmage. So no pass rush, got to fix that. Improvement on the offensive line, I think maybe more so than anything is a mental game. How do we improve that? And those are the big questions that I look at in this team. Obviously, you got some Jay Alexander questions. You got some, and then maybe secondary questions because of that. I think you have some linebacker questions as far as how you're going to make that work, knowing that who's been drafted in certain positions and rounds. And then, who's going to, is somebody ever going to emerge as the number 1 wide receiver? And what does that look like? Or is it just Tucker Kraft? Because he's pretty damn good too. But there's not a ton of questions here, but I think the most pressing one is like, are we ever going to have a group that is dominating the line of scrimmage? And if that's what we want, do we have the right people? Do we have the right leadership? Do we have the right coaching? I mean, like, what can we tweak there to make that a realistic thing? Or maybe that's not as important. Certainly these guys know more than I do. But anyways, I hope you've enjoyed. We'll get back to this at some point, but probably not next week. Maybe I'll do some playoff stuff. There's some interesting teams in there, and there's certainly gonna be some good matchups coming up. But it's been a lot of fun. I hope you guys have enjoyed. And hit me up, Mike Wall 68. Thanks to our sponsor, Bet Online. Fantasy Underdogs joining us as well, so I'm gonna shout out to them. And thanks, guys. See you.